All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL props video. Give me touching on the top prop bets that we have for this Sunday night showdown between Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. This is projected to be a fun slate, so let's go ahead and take a peek at it. Right now, this game is sitting at a 51.5 for the over and under, which is a massive game, and it's projected to be a close game. At 3.5 points, the Cowboys are favored to win. We take a peek at the injury report right now. For the most part, both teams are going to be pretty darn healthy. So that to me should lead to some predictability on this well. Now, before we start off with the props, I do want to draw attention to really the snaps for the Philadelphia Eagles, because we are potentially, and I think we're just expecting it now, going to see Dallas Goedert back. Okay. He is someone that was playing about 70 to 90% of the snaps, basically not leaving the field with Devonta Smith and AJ Brown. And with Dallas Goedert back, my biggest question is going to be, are we going to see Smith come back into his kind of slightly reduced role, kind of his roller coaster role that he was in at the beginning of the season? That is probably what's going to be occurring. At the same time, you could make a case for saying, well, Smith has looked so good that maybe they just really try to force him some touches. All in all, I do think we know that the passing targets are going to go to 3. It's going to be more difficult to figure out which Smith had been basically, if I don't want to say a free score, I hate using that terminology, but a very discounted square for us with Dallas Goedert out over the past 3 games. And the data liked it as well. It's a very nice spot. So very interesting there. And then Quez Watkins was back, probably going to be their receiver number 3. That means Julio Jones, Zacchaeus. They're not going to get that much work, so definitely interesting there. And then what do we do with the goal line stuff? Boston Scott seems to be taking over a little bit of goal line carries, meaning that kind of Gainwell, who did play 53% of the snaps, maybe he's not someone we're looking at. Swift, only 42% of the snaps. It is very difficult to say what to do with really the Dallas Cowboys other than really AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts. Those are the 2 that we should be able to easily predict. The rest of them, it's going to be more difficult. Now for Dallas, thankfully, they're pretty much a funnel offense at this point, which is very nice. We know it's going to be CeeDee Lamb, has insanely high target share, and then it's Jake Ferguson about 20%, and then Brendan Cooks, and then it's basically Pollard, Gallup. It's just mixed up with that. So yeah, let's go ahead and start out with the Eagles prop wise. And I'll say, I don't really like this one for Quez Watkins because I think it's predicated on his snaps. Now, I do think maybe there was a potential that in this game against San Francisco, and then look at kind of when he was on the field specifically and watching the film back, he wasn't something that popped up per se to know for sure. So I don't know if it was like blowout time that he played more snaps, but we know he is the receiver number 3. And in the games in which he has played and finished, we look at the snaps again, 77, 65. Like, I think that's my expectation for him, is to play at least 50% of the snaps. So with that, for Watkins, it only takes 1 catch. I don't really want to touch that one. And then looking at like Devonta Smith, again, like the data is really liking the over at 4.5, but that's why it's bumped to 5. And in a game that's going to be a shootout, I do think that there's a chance that he does get 5 receptions, but with Dallas Goedert back, what is the likelihood of him getting more? It becomes more difficult for him to get there. Now, can he still have a good game? Yeah. Is it surprising that he's been dominating lately? No, not at all. Like, I think in season-long leagues, a bunch of people probably drafted him, maybe not to do this well, but I have always kind of thought that he was just as good or near as good as AJ Brown. Now, they're completely different receivers, so it's really tough to make that sort of statement. It's like comparing Mike Evans to Chris Godwin, just different types of receivers. All in all, though, it wouldn't be surprising to see one of these 2 have another awesome game. Now, last time against Dallas, more AJ Brown, although Dallas played pretty well. So I get why the data is kind of telling us to bet the unders for a lot of these. And I will say DeAndre Swift for under his 12.5 fantasy score, that is certainly an interesting one to me. I don't know if I agree with the over rushing attempts as well at 13. Let's just take a peek at Swift in general. So Swift played a limited amount of snaps, but he did have a bunch of targets, 6 targets. And he has been someone that has been a little bit more involved in the passing game. And all in all, I do think that we are going to see him get more snaps. Again, I think the reason why we saw his snaps down in that game, not at 60%, is because that game was a blowout. Didn't even get that much work. And so we look at the game against Dallas, only 9.4. And so what does that tell us? That if he gets over the fantasy score, it's very much touchdown dependent, most likely. Now, it is a high scoring game. I would say the chances of him scoring a touchdown are probably pretty decent. It's an interesting one. If you are betting the under fantasy score here, you almost probably want to bet on Jalen Hurts to have a good game, because that 1 yard rushing touchdown is going to be there, or maybe Boston Scott scores a 1 yard rushing touchdown or something like that. All in all, they just don't like him on the goal line, so betting against him scoring a touchdown does make some logical sense. I should call it that, like, really besides the Watkins one that I personally don't like, all these are going to be less than a 54% edge. Again, that's typically the magic number that we want to chase. That's when we are gaining an edge compared to the sports and prize picks are under. Looking at it from there, I do think Devonta Smith for over fantasy score is one that I like, and which is kind of different from the receptions prop. And what's weird as well is that the receiving yards is also favoring the under, but this is, let's say, 6 points there, 5 points there. So this is at 11. It should be really at 11. Again, if he scores a touchdown, you're really getting a nice bang for your buck there. That's where it's weird. That is definitely strange. Like, that's pretty much me knowing that is like anytime touchdown is not terrible. It's probably like plus 120 or something like that, which all in all is probably about a 40% chance of him scoring a touchdown in this high scoring game. That's not a terrible bet. But yeah, we are seeing we're not really getting that many great prop bets for this squad. Maybe the only one that I would personally like, again, probably not the best on PrizePicks or Underdog, probably a better bet on DraftKings or FanDuel, would be Dallas Goedert to get over his receptions in that game against Dallas. 4 targets, 3 receptions, was well on his way to having a good game. You know, if you give him about 10% more of his snaps, which is what he typically gets, I would have said that he had a good chance of getting that over fantasy score. Again, this game is supposed to be a shootout. What I don't like here is that heading into this game, I would have said, yeah, we can blindly just stack this game, bet a bunch of the overs, and be good to go. You could do that, but right now, the data is not telling us to do that. I do want to take a peek at Underdog, see what the data is telling us there, if there's any better prop bets. So looking at the Eagles, again, yeah, really still not getting that many good prop bets at all. Maybe AJ Brown for over 77.5 receiving yards. Not terrible. You know, that's a 3-yard difference. We like to have 3-yard difference, but yeah, not. So let's go ahead and switch up and we'll get into the Dallas Cowboys. We're going to start with Underdog since I'm already on this page. So looking at right now, Dak Prescott for over passing, pretty interesting there. Pretty much the reason why this is being favored as a decent prop bet. I mean, it's not a big edge. I want to start with pointing that out, but this is basically being valued as the average sportsbook line is heavily favoring the under, but at 2.5. Okay, so they like it enough to give it a 2.5 valuation, but pretty much the sportsbooks are saying that the chances of doing that are not likely. But that's a way of them getting volume on a bet. From there, like Cooks, I really don't mind for his over receiving yards. Even Tony Pollard as well. I think we're getting some interesting ones there. Again, my issue here is that I think those are better bets on one of the sports books where betting on the over is going to be a much better payout, and then you're not losing a statistical advantage on PrizePicks or Underdog. But let's take a peek at those two. So Cooks gets a pretty good matchup this week against Philly. Now, this was really the game before the game, if you will, for him, where for like kind of 2 reasons. One, they didn't really need him to step up into a bigger role in this offense up until that point. You know, they've been kind of blowing out teams or really just beating them up on the ground or getting blown out themselves. It was super strange. Now we've seen still that happening. I mean, shoot, against Giants blowout, Carolina blowout, Washington blowout, Seattle, I mean, close game, but all in all, they won. So it is difficult to like figure out what's going to happen in terms of the roles. But I will say this offense has looked better. This team has looked better. The production has been a little bit more consistent. And so going back to that Philly game, that was kind of like the last game in which Cooks wasn't a big part of this offense. And for me, with this game being high scoring as it's projected to be, I think there's a good chance that he gets over receiving yards. Now, I will say that him having a good game, I really don't think correlates well with Tony Pollard or Jake Ferguson having a good game. Now, Tony Pollard is someone that I would expect to get involved in the passing game a little bit in this game. 5 targets last game against Philly. We've seen 4, 6, 5 targets the last few games against the Giants. Was not needed to be involved in the pass. The line at 23.5, yeah, it does feel a little bit too high, but all in all, like if it is going to be this high scoring game like it's projected to be, you would kind of expect him to be involved in the receiving game. All in all, looking at it a little bit more, that's probably one that we just stay away from. We do see on Underdog, at least we are getting a decent edge there. So like AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb for over the receiving yards on Underdog, seemingly a big edge there with the difference in the yardages. CeeDee Lamb, 7.5 receptions, a decent one. I do think Jake Ferguson for over 4.5 receptions is one that I like as well. All in all though, guys, what are we seeing? We don't have that many big edges. So looking at Jake Ferguson, I do think he is a integral part of this last game against Philly. He really dominated. And again, I think that's why Cooks didn't have a good game. I think that's why Tony Pollard didn't have a massive receiving game, because when Jake Ferguson is involved, that really just limits where the other targets can go. And, you know, he's looked good. And as long as they're not dominating this game where he's being asked to block a lot, I think we're going to see him have a good game. And so given the fact that this game is projected to stay close, I think he is going to have a good game. I think he's going to get over his reception. I'm fine with that. And for what it's worth, like looking at it, guys, I think the Brandon Cooks receptions prop is a little bit better because it's at 3.5. I'd be fine betting the over there as well. All in all, though, I do want to call it like these are not good prop bets on PrizePicks and Underdog, the case that we have here. So I'm going to hesitate to really give a bet of the day. I want to start with that, but we'll get into PrizePicks here real quick. So the data really does like the under for Cooks for under fantasy score. Again, I don't think I love that, but if we are betting that, then I think we would bet the over receiving yards there for Jake Ferguson and maybe even fan as well. But yeah, right now we're not getting any statistical edges, so it's very difficult for me to give you guys a bet of the day because we are not getting any sort of long-term projected ads game. And so getting into the bet of the day for this slate, to me, I just want to take advantage of those slight discrepancies that we have for the receiving yard. We're getting a 4-yard edge on underdog compared to PrizePicks. PrizePicks has the set at 94.5, and then AJ Brown, PrizePicks has the set at 80. The lines that we're getting on underdog would suggest, based off the average sportsbook line, that these are a little bit too low as well. I do want to caution against this though. None of these are going to be good EV bets. We are not getting any EV bets on this slate. There was one that Dak Prescott for over, I think it was 37 passing attempts or 37.5 was one prior to starting this video, was out there, and I would have been happy to give that to you guys. They had bumped that out. We'll see, maybe up until lineup lock, we might get a couple of different ones, maybe some kicking props or whatnot. But for now, these are the two best ones on. Again, guys, the data will be updated throughout the evening, so maybe we will find some good EV bets throughout the evening. So just make sure to be, or if you guys want access to the data, make sure to head on over to 95sports.com. It is available for just $10 a month for both PrizePicks and Underdog. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good slate. And as always, let's keep cashing.